Don't forget to like and subscribe to follow good stories. In the heavy atmosphere of the room, Vicente interrogated Elena. Is your name really Evelyn Benedict? The two sat across from each other under dim lighting, with a chest lying before Vicente. Elena's hands trembled, clasped together as she struggled to respond. What is it that you want to say? Opening the chest, Vicente replied, Unfortunately, my men found a portrait of you after searching all over Winsford. With that, Vicente pulled out a portrait, leaving Elena bewildered. The portrait differed in size from those of Evelyn and Carter. Given Evelyn's circumstances, Elena suspected that she might not have had the financial means to commission someone to paint her portrait. Vicente spoke up, I'm told it was made by a street artist. After I saw this, I decided to let go of my suspicions. I doubt there's another Evelyn Benedict who shares the same face as you. Holding the portrait in her hands, she asked Vicente, Then you aren't suspicious of me anymore? In regards to your identity, yes, Vicente answered. Elena then asked Vicente directly what opportunity he was ultimately offering her. Rather than answering her question right away, Vicente asked how much it would cost to buy her loyalty. Seeing her surprise, Vicente wondered if his approach seemed too arrogant to someone of her status. Meanwhile, Elena found him intriguing for attempting to buy her loyalty. She began to share, As I told you earlier, my sister suffers from a rare disease. I want you to hire her a physician and provide her with living expenses. I also want you to provide her with a safe place to stay in while I'm working here. I'd like you to look into Sister Tilly for me. I want to know if she's reluctantly following the madam's orders or if she was working with her from the start. If you can promise these things, I'll do anything for your sake. Taking a candle in hand, Vicente asked, Anything, huh? Is that really all you want? Elena, still not looking at Vicente, calmly replied, As I said, it doesn't matter what happens to me as long as Cora is safe. Vicente expressed concern. All people are greedy. I'm afraid I can't trust people who claim things like that. Honestly, you act like someone who knows that her days are numbered. Or perhaps you're someone who has already died. Hearing his morbid assessment, Elena began to question Vicente's words with suspicion. She couldn't be sure if she was imagining things. At that moment, Vicente was standing in front of her, his presence bearing down upon her small frame. Trying to steady herself, she looked up and asked him, What must I do to earn your trust? Vicente bluntly questioned her motives for betraying her master. Glancing at Elena, he continued, If you had made expensive demands, I would have felt more at ease. However, you say that there aren't many things that you want, and there's barely any difference between the madam's offer and mine. I thought you were concerned with your sister's safety, Evelyn. I don't understand how your master and I are any different. Elena had always trusted Vicente's character, knowing he wasn't the kind of man who would harm a 9-year-old child. Thanks to this trust, she mustered the courage to speak up. The madam used my sister's well-being to threaten me, so I had no choice but to follow her orders. Hearing this, Vicente responded, If I fail to secure your sister's safety, will you find another master to pledge your allegiance to? Do you intend to fail? Elena hesitantly asked. Her question brought a smile to Vicente's face, and he confidently replied, No. With this reassurance, Elena replied boldly, Then I shall give my loyalty to you. Vicente lowered his head, his tone threatening. Just like that? Ultimately, this conversation was just an excuse. From the beginning, Vicente was the one in control. He could either mercilessly expose her as a spy or choose to make her his ally. Placing a hand on Elena's shoulder, Vicente spoke with a dangerous edge. For the time being, continue doing what you've done so far. Dante will keep watch on your surroundings, so don't worry about your safety. Elena started. Does that mean? Try not to leave the 4th floor. However, if you must, have Dante accompany you. We'll discuss the rest once your sister's safety is secured. Leaving her with that statement, Vicente departed. Elena respectfully bowed to him. Understood. Please call for me anytime if there's anything you have to tell me. As if remembering something, Vicente called her back, also Evelyn. Only members of the imperial family are allowed to call each other by name. There are special circumstances where confidants are also granted that privilege. At least that's how it is in Espedia. I'll overlook it this time, but I ask that you don't make that mistake ever again. Elena recalled that she had accidentally called him by name, but only that once. He hadn't reacted, so she assumed he hadn't heard. Now, all she could do was apologize. My apologies, Your Highness. I shall bear that in mind. I won't call you by your name again. In a distant garden, From a time when Elena and Vicente were still young, Vicente would always say she didn't need to act so distant when it was just the two of them. Back then, Elena had always feared her father, who frequently reminded her to behave properly in the prince's presence. Yet, the prince would gently reassure her, telling her it wasn't necessary because they shared a special bond. When it was only the two of them, she could call him by his name. Elena, delighted, would ask, "May I really?" Awakening abruptly from a dream of the past, Elena startled herself awake. She had no idea how long she had been sleeping. Had she truly tossed and turned all night, only to end up dreaming of such a memory? It seemed as if she still harbored lingering regrets. Nonetheless, this was hardly the time for such thoughts. She needed to prepare Vicente's meal before it became too late. Opening the door, the scene before her left her astounded. Dante was placing something into Vicente's food. Seeing her, Dante remained calm, asking, "Oh, have you woken up already?" Elena instinctively reached into her pocket to retrieve her cards, but Dante stopped her. "You don't need to use the cards. My captain already told me about you. You can speak Espadian, right?" With that, he pressed Elena against the wall. Glancing at the bottle in his hand, she questioned him. "Prince Vicente said that?" Dante smirked. "I see. I suppose you're worried about this." With a complete change in demeanor, he pointed to the bottle, explaining it was merely fruit extract. She could add a touch of sweetness and color to her meal with just a small amount, he said, before pouring the liquid into his own mouth in front of Elena's astonished gaze. Finishing his drink, Dante recounted, "Before you came, Lucas and I occasionally prepared Prince Vicente's meals. Anyway, I'm His Highness's aide-de-camp. I would have found out eventually, so just be honest. Please keep it a secret for now." Finally, Elena spoke up. "I'm sure he's told you about my situation already." But she barely finished her sentence before Dante clutched his head, exclaiming dramatically, "Ack, I can't believe it. Not only does she speak Espadian, but she's fluent too. How did I get fooled so easily? I even considered carrying around a Britannian dictionary. I didn't know anything." Elena wondered if he felt betrayed. Suddenly, a loud scream startled them both. Reacting to the scream, Dante said, "Did you hear that? Seems like there's trouble downstairs. I'll go check on it. Wait here. I'll lock the doors on the 4th floor, so don't worry too much." Elena hesitated. But wouldn't that be inconvenient for His Highness when he returns to the 4th floor? Pausing before leaving, Dante replied, "He won't be coming." Elena, surprised, repeated, "He won't." Dante clarified, "Yes, but I want you to prepare his meal as usual. Don't touch the food. Just pretend you're setting up the table for His Highness. Also, stay away from the windows, all right? His Highness commanded me to ensure your safety under all circumstances." Meanwhile, inside the palace, a maid was found dead with no apparent cause. Judging by the state of the body, she had been deceased for a few hours. Dante arrived at the scene and overheard the other servants whispering amongst themselves. There was no sign of forced entry. Her room's door had remained locked. Furthermore, there were no indications of struggle. Therefore, they tentatively concluded that it was a suicide, although Dante had never seen anyone take their life in such a dreadful way before. At this moment, Elena was trembling as she inquired if the maid's name was Maria. Dante was taken aback that Elena knew the girl. Elena hadn't thought this was what he meant when he said he would take care of her. No, could it be true? Did Elena truly not know what had transpired? Now Elena was profoundly shaken by her current thoughts. Seeing her distress, Dante expressed concern, but Elena replied, "Jay, just a moment please. I need to meet with His Highness." Dante looked conflicted. "I'm afraid that's going to be difficult for a while. His Highness ordered that no one is allowed to enter his room." Even after forcing their way into Vicente's bedroom, the palace guards found no evidence. They would likely remain silent, but now was the ideal time to execute the plan. So, Vicente was currently absent from the palace. Realizing this, Elena asked Dante when she might be able to see Vicente again. Dante replied, "You'd have to wait at least 5 days. What do you need to meet him for anyway?" Elena's heart raced as she firmly stated that Maria had not taken her own life. As night fell, Elena carried a basin of water through the hallway. It had been a week since she had asked Dante if she could meet with Vicente. Every day, she had waited on the 4th floor for Vicente, but she had never encountered him. She continued cleaning the rooms as she ought to. All that remained was hers. She opened the door, and Vicente was standing there as if he had been waiting. Surprisingly, This was Elena's room. What was he doing here? Arms crossed, Vicente called her name, Evelyn. However, Elena, thinking she was seeing things, slammed the door shut. Instantly, Vicente reopened it with a dangerous tone. You're quite bold to slam the door in a prince's face. Elena finally collected herself and apologized, explaining that she was simply shocked to see him there. Vicente mocked. You must have lives to spare, huh? Anyway, you are the one who wanted to see me, Evelyn. Hearing that, Elena replied, come inside. You don't intend to talk in the corridor, right? Once inside, glancing at her own reflection in the basin of water, she realized she'd been so occupied with work all week to avoid thinking about Maria that she'd forgotten how disheveled she looked. She asked Vicente if he wouldn't mind allowing her a moment to straighten up. Vicente looked her over, unimpressed. Since when did I order you to do these menial tasks? Why take on extra work for no gain? Elena felt a pang of guilt, replying, I apologize if my actions were unnecessary. I had so many dark thoughts while idle, so I kept myself busy to avoid them. Vicente, visibly impatient, turned sharply. I don't have much time to spare, so tell me what you need to say. Elena put down the bucket she was holding. There's something I need to tell you about the maid who died. A dead maid? Vicente echoed. Are you talking about the one named Maria? Was she also hired by your master? Since you're bringing it up, I suppose you suspect she was murdered? Tell me who you think is responsible. Moving closer to Vicente, Elena replied, before I do, were you able to find Cora, your highness? I understand that a week is too short to travel to Britannia and back, but I would be grateful if you could tell me whether you've made any progress. As she began reaching into her pocket, Vicente replied, I had already finished investigating it when I made you my offer. It was immediately apparent to me that your sister was being held hostage. Anyway, check for yourself, Evelyn. It's a letter from your sister. The letter read, Hello, Evelyn. This is my second letter to you. How are you doing? I'm doing fine, but the physician who takes care of me keeps changing. I heard it's very cold where you are. I was worried about you, but I found your winter gloves and, as Elena read, her hands trembled. Vicente then informed her that her sister had been moved to a safe house and was being protected by his knights. From now on, Evelyn's sister would be safe. Dizzy with relief, Elena held her head, her voice growing faint. For some reason, Vicente found her especially disquieting tonight. She murmured, what a relief. Seeing Evelyn in this fragile state reminded Vicente of Elena. Unable to bear her misery and disorderly appearance, Vicente approached her, supporting her. If you want, I can have her brought here to Espada. Would that put your mind at ease? Surprised at Vicente's sudden change in demeanor, Elena replied, It's all right, your highness. This is enough for now. What matters is that Cora is safe. This might sound strange coming from me, Vicente remarked, but don't you think you're too trusting of others? For all you know, that letter could be a forgery. Elena shrank back, replying, Well, I trusted it, because you were the one who gave it to me. Vicente's eyebrows knitted together, but Elena continued, I see. Why don't you tell me what you were going to say? There's a man who guards the front gate, your highness. I believe he's responsible for the incident. Vicente responded, You must be talking about the one connected to the madam. How did you know? Elena explained, I told him that Maria was a traitor. Through the guard, the madam gave me two options. Either plant the fake document you saw in your personal study or find the hidden tunnel that leads outside. It's been a week since then. There's no telling what will happen if I don't make another report. Gripping the piece of paper tightly, Elena declared, It's entirely possible I'll be the next target. Vicente reassured her, You don't seem afraid. Moving closer to the prince, Elena bowed. No, your highness. I am. Vicente chuckled. Right. The more he interacted with her, the more Vicente felt as though he was falling into a trap someone had set. Everything about her, from her analytical skills to her decision-making ability, was captivating. Her beautiful face would undoubtedly be welcomed by high society, especially with her noble vocabulary and clear pronunciation. In addition, she showed remarkable courage, appearing unafraid of death. But most striking was her resemblance to Elena. She looked just like her. She embodied everything Vicente sought. Yet, because of her uncanny likeness to Elena, Vicente lacked the ruthlessness he would have otherwise possesses. Unplanned events often lead to regret. There was only one thing Vicente needed to consider. If she chose to stand by him, she would be his most powerful weapon against Castro. At that moment, Vicente spoke. Choose. I'll give you one last chance to extricate yourself from this mess. I can provide you with a doctored document to offer to your master. If you wish, I can even help you break free from this entirely. Just say the word, and you can return to Britannia. Elena called after him. Please wait, Your Highness. What's the alternative? Choose me of your own accord, Vicente suggested. Elena hesitated. I cannot do that, Your Highness. I've already chosen you. Vicente, however, believed it was merely her circumstances forcing her loyalty. She sought to protect her sister, but many would sell out their families for small gains. Thus, Vicente wanted Elena to reconsider his offer. He would feel more assured if her terms were stricter. Elena pondered Vicente's words, costly. Listening to Vicente's words, it feels as if he might truly be able to solve everything for me. He may have lost his title as the crown prince, but that doesn't change the fact that he's the heir apparent to the Samora County on his mother's side. As its heir, he will inherit Samora's massive mines and land. Considering this, it'd be more natural if I asked him for more as he suggested. After reflecting, she voiced her request. I want a separate manor to look after my sister and a mansion in the capital. Also, I'd like to hire servants and a physician to care for Cora. With those assets, Elena believed she could persuade Carter's father to allow their marriage. This could also serve as compensation for Evelyn, as Elena was inhabiting her body without permission. So, she proposed to Vicente, since you want it to be costly, I also want to be provided with 3 horses and a pension of 10 pesetas each month. Vicente agreed to her requests. Elena tried to prove her loyalty this time. She had truly chosen the prince of her own free will, without threat or coercion. Vicente questioned her. Will that really be compensation enough for our deal? If you wish, I'd be willing to give you anything you want. Ignoring his threatening tone, she turned away and replied, would you even be willing to offer yourself as compensation, Your Highness? Vicente moved closer. Do you need me? You aren't serious, are you, Your Highness? Elena asked. Vicente replied, I'm half serious. I need you rather urgently. Blushing, Elena stammered, you don't need to bind things with rewards or contracts, Your Highness. For me, it's enough that you pledge to remember our deal. This room is too messy to carry on with a longer conversation. Please give me a moment to tidy it up. The prince then informed her that he would soon be returning from exile and wanted her to accompany him to the capital, where he planned to introduce her to the elite society. Elena hesitated. What? The nobility wouldn't be kind to a commoner like me. I doubt I'd be of any help. Vicente, however, could easily fabricate a noble lineage for her by purchasing the title of a defunct noble family that had vanished 30 years prior. No one would recognize Elena, allowing her to pass as a noble heiress with an inheritance from a benevolent relative. Once she made her debut, Vicente planned to introduce her to a few prestigious salons to establish her reputation. He wanted her to attend these gatherings regularly. By following Vicente's plans, everyone would eventually focus their attention on Elena. She asked, how can you be so sure? Vicente replied, because those around us will falsely believe we're lovers. And if everything goes smoothly, the crown prince will take an interest in you. The crown prince? Elena asked in shock. I intend to use you as bait to lure Castro, Vicente explained. There's no need for you to seek him out deliberately. He'll approach you himself, like a dog in heat, once he sees you. Hearing Vicente's words, Elena shivered. His final words struck her like thunder. All you have to do is keep him distracted. Fate seemed cruel. Despite all the choices she had made, and the new life she had stepped into, she was still bound to pretend to love once more. The mere thought of him made her stomach churn. She remembered the day she once approached him. Your Highness, I apologize for interrupting your break. I've come to inquire about the request I recently asked of you. The prince responded impatiently. Your request? If it's about real Cordova, don't even bother, Elena. The red-lipped girl with pink hair spoke up. My, Real Cordova is the best academy in the empire, isn't it? Hearing this, the prince slammed his glass onto the table, roaring. Do you intend to study there? Education only makes women arrogant. Do you think you're in any position to be asking me for anything, Elena? Stunned into silence, Elena struggled to respond. The prince continued. You didn't listen, even though I warned you not to smile at other men. She explained, if you're referring to what happened yesterday, I only smiled because I was happy to see a friend. A friend? He bellowed. Don't try to fool me. I know you were smiling at that damn night. I won't forgive you if I see you smiling at someone else again. And don't even think of learning anything. All you have to do is stand by my side and obey me. Am I clear? The memory stirred her fears. Vicente noticed her distress, asking, is that too overwhelming? With a hollow, fearful look, Elena replied, I didn't expect to get involved with the crown prince. I thought I'd merely continue my job as a spy and uncover the madam's identity. Or perhaps you'd have me infiltrate another palace as a maid who doesn't speak the imperial tongue. Vicente sighed. You can do that if that's what you want. You'd only cause more problems if you ended up trembling like this in front of the crown prince. She finally asked, why are you so fixated on the crown prince, your highness? If Vicente's goal was to become emperor, he ought to approach this carefully. Stirring up the noble society in the way he was doing with her was not the safest strategy. Feeling bold, Elena countered, you have to be honest with me if you want me to trust you, your highness. We're now under contract. Don't forget that makes us equals. Vicente raised an eyebrow. Equals, you say? Elena shrank back, replying softly, the more I help you, the faster you'll reach your goals. Please consider that. If your aim is the throne, there are safer ways of going about it, your highness. Vicente grew increasingly displeased with her words. I didn't know I had a maid more knowledgeable than my advisor. Elena understood that this was his way of telling her to stay silent and know her place. No one knew what would happen if she overstepped the boundaries he'd set. Perhaps it was best not to push any further on this matter. Yet, if she didn't ask now, she might never learn the truth from Vicente. Your highness, Elena spoke up, do you perhaps have a personal vendetta against the crown prince? Vicente scoffed. That's none of your business, Evelyn. Although I appreciate your boldness, I don't recall giving you permission to be this insolent. However, I suppose you have a point. A sword that doesn't know its wielder's intent is bound to lose its edge. Listen closely. There's no other way to put it. My goal is revenge. I want the names of Castro and his father to be the most shameful in all the empire. Those to know no shame. They took what wasn't theirs and destroyed it beyond repair. I don't just hate them. I despise them. I despise them as much as I despise myself. Elena replied, you mean, I'll be in a precarious position, perhaps even finding myself in the crown prince's bedroom? Vicente nodded resolutely. If that's what it takes, yes. The mention of Castro's name shocked Elena so profoundly that it shook her sense of duty to assist Vicente and her plans for compensation for Evelyn and Cora. Yet, at that moment, a new possibility emerged in her mind. She could exact revenge on the emperor and the prince, those who had abused their power against her. Elena could prevent Castro from being remembered as the victor in this game. She could cause him to fall in the most painful way. She asked Vicente, all I have to do is distract the crown prince, right? Vicente confirmed, if it's possible, yes. Elena looked at Vicente, requesting a promise. Please promise me that you won't abandon me when we're in the capital. I'd rather die than be dragged into the crown prince's bedroom. Vicente approached her. The spark in your eyes has returned, and you're not shaking like before. Was that all an act? No, your highness. It's just that I've taken an interest in that revenge you mentioned. Hearing her words, Vicente turned, saying, your motives don't matter to me as long as you do what you need to. Elena assured, I'll do my best to live up to your expectations. As you should, Vicente replied, starting tomorrow, you won't be restricted to the 4th floor. In fact, it's probably wise to increase the number of witnesses by having you work among the other maids. Confused, Elena asked, why? Vicente continued, 2 months from now, Evelyn Benedict will die. People might grow suspicious if a wealthy heiress suddenly appears out of nowhere. It would be troublesome if anyone tried to investigate your past, so it's best to pretend that Evelyn is dead. There was no need to hesitate or worry. Vicente had promised to handle everything. Evelyn's death would be kept secret from Cora, and if the madam made a move because of this, it might lead them straight to her. Elena knew it was all for the best, yet his face kept coming to mind. She sighed, bringing tea to the prince. Since you asked me to continue my duties as a maid for now, Vicente replied, good. Keep up the act as if nothing has changed. Leave the tea there. I'm sure you're aware that I called you here for a reason, right? Placing the teapot on the table, she replied, yes. I heard you had something to ask me. Vicente's question surprised her. Can you play the piano, Evelyn? Elena replied that she could play a bit, having learned by watching others, and could perform La Muller's tudes and clavatia. In truth, she could play clavatia without looking. She'd practiced countless times since Castro had once forced her to play it. Vicente seemed pleased and asked if she could ride a horse, but Elena admitted she couldn't. He then inquired if she could write poetry, which made her hesitate. As a child, she often recited poetry to Vicente, but now she felt it best to avoid anything tied to her past. So, she told Vicente that she didn't know how to compose poetry. Vicente beckoned her closer. Come closer, closer, until he remarked, I've noticed this for a while. You have excellent posture, Evelyn. It's not something that can simply be learned. I actually took ballet lessons as a child in the monastery where I lived. It's the largest in the area, and they taught us ballet as part of our education, with biannual performances, Elena explained. Vicente understood, realizing it explained her studious nature. Children from Elena's monastery were popular as tutors because of their disciplined education. He was certain she'd become more comfortable with waltzing after a few more dances. Elena couldn't help but think how naturally she recounted Evelyn's memories, almost as if she'd lived them herself. Yet it seemed Vicente only half believed her. Serious, Vicente said, before we depart for the capital, I'll teach you all the court etiquette, dances, and poetry you need to know. But blending into high society will require much more. I'll need you to read and memorize 12 books on Expedia, 3 on history, and 1 on theology in 3 weeks. You must know them well enough to recite them if necessary. Vicente explained that he had chosen Lucas because his father was a nobleman, and he had graduated top of his class from Real Cordova, the academy Elena had longed to attend, even when under Castro's command. With his knowledge, perhaps Elena would gain a fresh perspective. She offered Lucas a respectful bow. I'm honored to be taught by you, Sir Lucas. Though I may lack knowledge, I'll do my best to. Lucas interrupted. We'll begin once you've read all these books. All of this? Elena asked in surprise. Lucas gave her 2 days to prepare and added that if it was too much, she was free to give up now. As night fell, Elena finished reading and summarizing the books as Lucas had instructed. Without looking at her, Lucas requested, I want you to read these books by tomorrow evening. Don't forget to summarize them. Distressed, Elena set down the papers. Sir Lucas, do you know how many times you've done this? I've read and summarized these books countless times because you said they were important. I made time to complete your assignments, despite my duties as a maid. If you're not even going to check my work, why are you making me read all these books? Lucas was indifferent. Are you suggesting I'm ignoring you on purpose? Isn't that the case? Elena blurted, feeling frustrated. He wouldn't even look at her, and his indifferent expression showed no intention of teaching her. Though she felt foolish for having been so eager, she no longer felt the desperation she once had. She asked him directly, Do you dislike me? Lucas sighed. You're one of Prince Vicente's confidants. Whether I like you or not isn't important. Elena felt a sting of disappointment. When she was only a maid, Lucas had treated her like an ordinary person, but now he treated her as if he didn't recognize her. She questioned why he refused to teach her, not because she sought his approval, but because she felt he'd lied to Vicente by agreeing to be her tutor. She admonished him, You promised to teach me in front of His Highness, but all you've done is make me summarize some passages. Honestly, you should just test me on the books instead of wasting my time. At that, the tip of Lucas's pencil snapped, and he asked, Why should I bother doing that? I'm afraid it's you who's wasting my time. Lucas's clear displeasure raised doubts about whether he would ever genuinely commit to teaching her. What might happen next? Stay tuned for the next chapter of the romantic manhwa. Please save me on the REVIEWMANHWA channel. Don't forget to like and subscribe.